Thanks for staying with us. The lady and the gentleman are with me in studio. Sheila Olang, Dr. Omolo, Ahmed Hashi, Council Mugendi, and Professor Peter Kagwanja. As he sips his tears, your hand goes up.
Yes. Okay. I think what we're trying to do is not to say that there is anything grossly wrong with making new laws, essentially, because the society has always to catch up with the law. It's all about the underlying debate, whether there is a trust for the current regime to introduce and basically, bring about law that is for the common good, the Kenyan. So that's what some of my colleagues are calling trust deficit. But laws, every generation has three problems. One, they say when they were young, the youth respected their elders. That's one of the permanent deficits we have. Two, taxes were reasonable. And three, politicians were noble. So we will always have to make laws within this particular context. And I will say this and stop. The only guarantee that this democracy will survive is not the law, it is the people. It is us. Because if we judge that the law is not working like that, like what is now being talked about, the cyberspace, vis-a-vis its impact on human rights or potential impact on human rights, how would you kind of repeal and possibly remove that law if it's draconian as it is being defined here? It's us. And the fact that we are now debating this law tells you that our democracy is alive and vibrant. That's all. And for me, that's what I care about. Because, as I said, I teach a course at the university called Science and Technology in International Relations. And we look at the impact of technology across the space. And one conclusion you come around is that technology disrupts and therefore requires law to regulate. But that law might not be the most appropriate. Take, for example, why do we have railways? Why did we have railways outside cities? Because people went to court and said they are making noise. So you find all the railway lines are completely outside cities. It is cities that are now encroaching to the space of the railways. Because technology has to be debated that way. So in specific to the laws that we are enacting on cyberspace and so on, those are likely to deepen. Look at the disruptive nature of the technology that we are now embracing, the nanotechnology, AI, and so on, and its impact on things. We had a debate with the colleagues about how do we now supervise PhDs at the university when you can basically generate it through, you're calling it GTP. GTP. Yeah, you can literally generate a PhD thesis in hours. It used to take us 5 years.
Yes.
Right? If you are very well equipped and suave about it, you can produce it in seconds. Yeah, and here you have, the problem is now reading, not producing. So what are we talking about? Even at the universities and other spaces of learning, we have now to catch up in terms of laws that are enacted in senates to now regulate. How do we deal with this? Because somebody cannot, generate that kind of thing. So, but now if you enact the law, this is the debate we had with colleagues in one of the platforms, you are encroaching on the freedom of people to use technology to advance themselves. But what happened to the mind? Are you producing a mind that can think for the nation, or you're producing a mind that is simply technology dependent? So these are debates that we have to face.
Yes, Council. Where do we, earlier on I did posit to Dr. Omolo about the limits in terms of the moral limit and the legal limit. But ideally we have seen also an upsurge recently. Posts that bordered on immorality, could be say, putting people in caskets, killing them while they are alive, celebrating death, as we had seen on social media, ideally. How will this mix be addressed, given the circumstance we have now before us by this Act of Parliament?
Thank you, Ayub.
perhaps we can give me a little leeway to get into that
yes,
point,
please, yeah.
but I will answer it. I think it is not wise to pick legal information from newspapers, and I'm saying that with a lot of caution, because I have heard here on the panel that there is a definition of annoyance. I had to look at Daktari almost asking him, did you read a bill that I didn't read? You know, and I want us to be fair to the lawmaker himself. What exactly was amended? The amendments was on the functions of the NC4 to issue directives on websites that have child pornography, trafficking, terrorism. And the wording is if proved.
By a court of law.
Kara actually made that proposal to the Departmental Committee on Information Communication and Digital Technology. So that was the amendment of Kara, and it was taken up. What was amended? The terminology of access, including the wording of what is a program. Yeah? And the entry into a computer, not just by a person, but also a device. The third thing that I saw in the amendment was the inclusion of the issue of deliberate and intentional acts in the cyberspace that cause suicide. That was the intention of the lawmaker. And I would want to request, and I don't know if I'll be out of line to suggest this, we can hate whoever we want to hate, but can we at least look at the law that was adopted first?
The substance.
Yes. The substance of the law, the substratum itself, does not concern anything that I have seen online. The issues about 20 million fines about comments are nowhere in that amendment. That was already in statute, and it was combating something different. The power of NC4, just hold on. Yeah. I want to teach you so that you understand what we're talking about. Because you are, we are now discussing legal issues. When we talk about the power of NC4, Section 6D talks about act of receiving and acting information, because on the NC4 sits the Inspector General of Police, the NIS Director, the PS Treasury, the PS ICT, and so many others, including the Attorney General. Okay? Then we have an expanded definition on phishing. We have an expanded definition of content blocking. So what I am reading in a fair assessment, to be honest, is disinformation. Because we are misleading the public by suggesting to them things that were not written. Anything that has been said does not even exist in the memorandums that were submitted to the Departmental Committee on ICT.
Okay,
so
let him finish up.
Yes. One thing that I would also like to conclude with the point that you made on hate speech. There are laws in their nature, and even if this thing is tested in court, what is the court going to look at? It is going to look at the test of Article 24. How is this thing written in law? Yes. What is the nature of the right? What is the importance? What is the extent of the limitation? So that if you are asking me about hate speech, and this is the problem we have with hate speech conversations, and Article 19 in the UK had the same problem. Human beings cannot legislate law to be free from insult. You cannot walk around life. We cannot walk around life because Kagwanja is sensitive. He's sensitive to be called any terminology that you could want to use. Correct. Why? Because the nature of the right, in terms of subjecting it to judicial scrutiny every single now and then, is to turn our courts into lawmaking institutions, which is not the issue. Courts are oversight institutions. They are a check on the powers that legislate.
As Daktari has mentioned.
As he has properly mentioned, which is recognized in the amendment itself. Okay,
Council, let me ask you this then, before I come to Sheila, because she had pointed that Ahmed Hans was up. I'll come to you, Daktari, as well.
Yeah.
For instance, of course, you have an understanding of what constitutes false content under Clause 10?
There is nothing like Clause 10 in the amendment.
Okay, what does it
And
say?
that is why I'm suggesting we stick to what is in the amendment.
So what is false according to you?
I didn't get the question.
Come on.
What do you mean?
That's being disingenuous. Come on.
Okay,
give us a chance to reply to this young fellow here.
Yeah, okay.
Listen, first of all, this guy cannot teach me anything.
Second, hang on, let me ask him the question. Come to you. Be patient.
Please bring it. That's good.
Section 22 of the Act Council says any provides false information maliciously intended to injure another person commits the offence chargeable under Section 22 of this Act.
Yeah.
Which is what I was saying.
Come on, give us a...
That was already in statute.
I think, Mr. Ayub, Ayub, I think it's very...
Could I be allowed to answer?
He keeps saying, let him be allowed, and he has repeatedly said nonsense. So in my view, the Chief Justice... the Chief Justice of this country, he's given him more time. We're not going to allow this little young man to come here and lecture us over Lucina.
I don't think we are allowed to be condescending.
No, you are condescending. You started it. So you get it back. So I think that the Chief Justice of this country, Mr. Maraga, who I think has more experience than this fellow sitting on my right, stood and said that he can teach us something. I don't think the young man on my right can teach me anything. I think I'm his senior. Now, Mr. Maraga, who is a Chief Justice, and the law community in this country have stood up and they are up in arms about it. I am up in arms about it. My legal friend on the right has shown us where the problems are in this law. So we're not in a law class. The Kenyan public deserves a political understanding of the law, not a legal interpretation, because a legal interpretation can be given by anybody. You can have an illegal interpretation of the law, I can have one, and we can go in front of a judge and he'll be swayed by one argument or the other. But when we're talking about the political repercussions of a law, that's an absolutely different and foreign territory to the young man on my right. This is not a class in a court of law. The second thing is I don't think we should make confusion worse confounded. Because as a politician who has spent time in jail, for him to come here and speak, I know these politicians here and what they want. The first thing that the government has done to bring this legislation is to find a way in which they can deal with the Gen Z and their computer science. That's number one. So that they can stop them through the court system by doing A, B, C. And that is my contention.
Fair point.
So if that contention is in the political repercussions of the law. Yeah. So my learned, and I'm going to say my learned friend has got a long way to being learned.
Thank you. No problem. Let me make him his point, yeah.
Yes.
Prof, allow me to finish.
Can we have...
Yes, yeah. A fairly good argument.
Fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's
it's an agreement to disagree on substance. Let me allow the council to finish. Please finish up.
Yes,
no
I was making a brief point.
You're protected, so you should be less worried. Yeah.
Thank you. And it's okay. It's okay to be... That's what the law protects, free speech.
Free speech.
So... what you asked me was a very direct question, and I want to answer you this way.
Yeah.
There was no amendment called Section 22.
Okay.
What you're asking me was already in statute. And when you're looking at a statute, legally speaking, if it's not in definition and you're charging it in a court of law, it is the DPP who reviews that before it is presented in a court of law. So what... we all know, we all have a general consensus what is false. It is inaccurate, it is not true, and the definition is not in statute. Yeah. There is a manner in which it is gleaned. My point was simple. Yes. What exactly was the amendment in the bill? What exactly was in the memorandum?
But that's our contention. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think he was able to read it, which is why I was saying we need to be cautious. We need to be cautious on the information that we are presenting.
Because earlier on here you were responding, Prof. Because
it's okay, I'm used to contention. So
yes, Sheila.
I understand.
Condensation.
Yes,
different story.
Yeah. So allow. Before I come to Prof.
I'll be happy to be the fire extinguisher. I think first of all, we're not in a legal class setting.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think for the people who are watching us, we will benefit them more when we have an honest conversation about what that means to that Mama Boga who is sitting somewhere on TikTok or Twitter writing something. And they're worried and they're anxious about what does this mean for me? Can I write anymore? Are my freedoms taken away? So I think in a way you are right in terms of say that we need clarity and we need to make sure that we don't pass the wrong information as we're having these conversations. This is not supposed to be some kind of elite conversations where you have to be a lawyer.
My point exactly.
Because the law will have to apply to all of us. So you have an obligation when you sit here to help all of us understand what is going on.
And it's his first time sitting here, so they are
That's
teaching.
the first. So that's the first point that I would like to send across. The second point is quite simple. I think you're being too caught up on the jargon between what was the amendment. We were looking at the bill in its about what has been assented.
That is
now Kenya is part of the Budapest Convention, right? I think, Dr. you're here. So it's very easy to simply take a table, which is what I did last night, and then look at the difference between this particular aspect of the Kenyan one versus the South African one versus the Nigeria, Tanzanian one. And then you can get a very clear understanding about where we are and where we need to go. A few aspects are not debatable. The first is it is punitive. We are working more on punishment and less on prevention. Law will say, fine, these are the punishment, but also this is how we prevent you from getting to where you're supposed to get to in terms of that, because a lot of cyber issues are not understood by a lot of us. I mean, it's something new and it's moving very quickly. So we have to invest a lot in trying to ensure that we have a public that is kind of prepared to receive this. That is one. So focus less on punishment, more on protection in all ways. The second issue I have with them, with this bill, is that it is not gradual. You know, you're moving from 0 to 100 very, and that bothers me with a state that we don't trust, right? So it doesn't tell you, okay, you can have 2 months for tweeting one versus 20 years for tweeting. You know, it's left at the discretion of an entity that lacks oversight. Compared to the other bills, and you can look from, you know, the Netherlands to, let's say, South Africa, because sometimes I don't like using the Western countries too much. We could argue they're a bit advanced. In Africa, Kenya is positioned very well, right close to South Africa. So I always like using South Africa as a benchmark for a lot of our laws. If you look at the South African context of how they're dealing with this, it is very, very human rights focused. Why? They try to strike a balance between, you know, trying to make sure that we are protected, our human rights are protected, but also that we are compliant. What does this look like? This looks like you saying we have a more holistic bill, not just a bill that goes straight into, but this is the punishment, which is what this one does. So yes, we have to link cybercrimes to data protection. We have to link cybercrimes to the Kenyan constitution. We have to link cybercrimes to the current political atmosphere that is going on. You cannot just behave as if we exist in a vacuum. We are in a contextualized vacuum here.
Yes, Dr. I'll come to you, and Prof starting you, and then Dr. to you.
Yes,
your hand was up.
Yes, I think the point we are trying to make here, and I can understand why there is this, you know, fire. Yeah. Because we can come from our professionalism and assert certain things that exist, this does not exist. Now, when you look at the comment from the former Chief Justice Maraga about this, he says that the law's true intent is to control and crush political dissent under the guise of fighting cybercrime. This is his contention. It's not about the law, and this is the point being made here.
Yes.
So the issue is about the state of our democracy, the state of, I mean, and what we would want to see moving forward. Yeah. About the deficits, integrity, credibility, accountability deficit that we are facing. And that is the context in which this is now being debated. I don't think it's about whether the law is good or not good. It's about whether it is going to advance our democracy moving into the future, or it has another intent. And when you see a Chief Justice focusing on intent, this is really a point to watch. The law, as conceived by the lawmaker, might have, you know, noble
intention,
intention. Yeah. But then the political context requires caution. Yeah. I think this is the debate we're talking about. And here we are talking about the cyber. I think the most sinister part of this package of the law was more about the privatization. And that's where our antenna is very high, because you are literally selling our inheritance I mean, who gave us the permission to sell state things to the private?
To the private sector.
And who is going to benefit from these sales?
Yeah,
now, so we did economics and we invested life in knowledge about these things. And we do know that any government that thrives on privatization is basically anti-people. It doesn't matter how you want to see it.
Absolutely.
Because the value is to bring more to the people, add wealth to the nation, rather than to give it to private people, particularly if the buyers are not Kenyans or are Kenyans working in tandem with others. And sometimes that's why I like Britain, because they will protect a building, not because it is very beautiful, but because it has significance in our history and in our lives, and you protect it. What happened to protecting some of the iconic institutions that have become part and parcel of our lives and the lives of Oginga Odinga and Raila Odinga and those who have gone before us? What links us and the past in terms of our institutions? Pipelines. You know, you are literally privatizing or selling out, because privatization is simply a sanitized word of selling. You are selling the commanding heights of our economy. How autonomous? How autonomous? On how can we be?
Just a quick point about teaching.
I mean, just hang on, because I need to also get Daktari's view here. Daktari, in December 2014, Parliament passed the Security Amendments Bill. Then came an act of parliament, but the court struck out some sections at the height of course, the terror attacks that we were under 3 years before Operation Linda Inchi. And it was under the same conversation that kicked up in the aftermath of that bill which was passed by Parliament. Is it a similar feeling now, given what the young people had done last, push the government to the brink?
The feeling may be there, and I agree with, I think, Professor Kagwanja said that we need to sensitize, and she also mentioned that, explain to the people why we are passing this law, the reasons for it. So if you look at the security amendment laws that were passed then, they were plainly unconstitutional. You know, if you looked at them on the face of it, and I think even the president then, Uhuru Kenyatta, was advised that they
should not sign.
Yeah, that they were unconstitutional. So, but in this particular instance, I've looked at the law and also the different conventions we have signed. And for example, you see Serbia has also signed this convention. Senegal has signed it. Sri Lanka has signed it. So what they're trying to do is come up with an international framework that can enable coordination across jurisdictions. So you need to localize your laws to reflect even those definitions that are in the Budapest Convention. So essentially, this is what they are trying to do. So I don't think that they may target certain sections of the society. But this is under international obligations that they are acting. So the fears are there, and we don't know if the government will do that in terms of what the fears which he has alluded to. So that is the context in which I see it. So the security laws were completely unconstitutional, and we were aware of that, and we advised different agencies that you're going to face up in court. And they said, okay, we are ready to face the court. Let's pass it, and then we will see what to do after it reaches the court. So for this one, I don't think it is in a similar context, and I think it is generally good legislation. But we must be vigilant. The courts must ensure that they protect, they offer the oversight that is necessary. So that is the way I look at it. Yeah. Yes.
Councillor, it's your turn, but your hand was up. Yeah, briefly. No, yes. It is his turn. Yeah.
Yes.
To be fair to him.
Just quickly,
just quickly.
I think you needed an undergraduate degree to go to law school and pass the examination to go into law school, the school that I went to. And one of the things you're taught is about moral philosophy. Of course, here we have an entirely different situation in our country. I'm concerned about it, and I've always been concerned about it. But the question on the table today is whether or not the government is using certain legislation, as my learned friends have all said, to have a consequential issue on how they're going to deal with the political situation in our country, and that's really the meat and potatoes of the thing. And at the end of the day, I'm against it because of those things, because I know that the administration has done A, B, C, D. That's my point. The second thing is, I think it is very important for us to speak to the public in a way that is very respectful and to inform them. Because, you know, if you get CAP 2, CAP 4, and CAP 6, and you have not synthesized it to give the public an education about what is going on, whatever point of view that you have, I think it's inaccurate. That's my second point. My third point is that we ought to be morally upright on it, because there's, you know, there's some two, there's the two jurists who, I forgot the name right now, but the question here also is not only just the law, there's the morality of the law. And I think that under the government, what has happened in the last 3-4 years under this administration, every citizen has a right to be very, very upset about how the country is going. And any law that comes to them is this trust deficit that my friend over there, my learned friend, was talking about. And that is what the public and the media and broadcast journalism has to do for the public of this country. That's all.
Jatana.
Yes. Perhaps it's good to go back to the context of what I was speaking about, because it's about simplifying what exactly was in the law so that citizens can understand. My context was just from a legal background, because I have a good background in AI innovation, engineering. You have malevolent actors within the cyberspace with whom controlling them has become difficult and so nefarious that they are so concealed beyond what we can possibly control. For instance, if anyone was to attack a system that, say, powers Microsoft here in Kenya.
Or let's say the immigration system.
Yes, or the immigration system. The 20 million fine before the amendment is a blip on their financials. A blip. Because that was the target of the law. Those people who have profiteered from child pornography are the object of the law. Those people who have conducted mass fraud, any one of us here has received an unwanted text or a hyperlink or a call from people who have posed as legitimate institutions. And they, in one way or another, taken money from you or taken your personal information. That is what I was alluding to earlier, that was the object of the law, not the individuals. And I would not want either of us to become a victim when you have not become a perpetrator. None of us here was the object of the law, not the media, not the people who have proffered opinions. Our political differences aside, because no one knows the political leanings that I have. I don't know Kagwanja, I've met him for the first time. Do I know any of these good people, you know? So mine is to essentially convey the message that, one, even when we go to court, because the courts are part of the governance system that we allowed ourselves in the social contract. You know, law is a tool for social engineering. It is not, technical language is only for drafting. The message that is passed in law is what is most important. So that when the courts are sitting to address on your behalf their mind, does this law, for instance, is it unconstitutional? What are they going to look at? I think it is a worthy idea to test that, because the court is not going to consider our political ideology. The court is not going to consider whether we trust whoever passed the law. The courts, on the behalf of the citizen, will objectively analyze this bill from the time it was drafted to the time public participation took place to the time the bill was passed. So that when we say, for instance, I'm wrapping up.
Yes, please.
When we say, for instance, the bill was passed in record time, the court will look at what is the date on the face of the bill. It's dated last year. When was it brought into Parliament? 25th of September 2024. When did public participation take place? In February.
This year?
Yes.
Okay.
So those are the issues, and you know, those are factual issues.
And the substance also,
yes,
on the ground.
And the substance of the substratum of the issue.
I think it's important to clarify one. My position, or a lot of the concerns that is going on, is not in the totality of the bill. I think I was the first one to praise it for certain aspects of what it's doing. Right from nobody on this panel in their right minds is opposing fighting against terrorism or child pornography. I think that's not it. We are concerned about very specific aspects of the bill, not the entire bill itself. Of course, we need cyber protection. Of course, we need all those provisions. I think what is lacking in the conversations that we are having, when I talked about context, I meant that as we speak, we have the privilege of wearing these nice suits in this studio. Albert Ojwang died because he tweeted something.
Because he tweeted.
Albert Ojwang died because he tweeted something. A very good tech lady, young lady with very good tech skills, was charged with terrorism because she decided to break down the financial
tax bill.
Okay? I know people myself who have been looked for inside their houses because of a tweet. So as much as it is good to discuss all the other aspects of the bill, the aspect that for me concerns me a lot is this witch hunt that is going to happen on individuals, right? The other aspects are very great. I think you've spoken about them very well. But we do exist not in a vacuum, but we exist in a place where there's a lot of, whether we want to run away from political leaning or non-political leaning, irrelevant. I mean, for me, the fact that we buried Albert Ojwang today and we still do not have legislation on how police conduct investigation, locate you, find you having lunch with your wife and child, and then kill you, bothers me a lot. Where is the balance? And that's why we spoke, we need balance. It is not nicely written in a book. The law itself, for us, we experience the law. This is why we have to pay attention to it. So unless you can give me the bill, the amendment bill on police oversight, unless you give me the amendment bill on abuse of power, unless you give me the amendment bill on how to protect our rights as a country, in the same context, when you give me this bill, then I'm not okay with it.
Okay, I'm glad that you have also made
I am the fire extinguisher.
It's very good. Just one sentence.
Please. And Prof, by the way, the point she mentions about Njeri, the tech engineer, the court dismissed all the charges against her. She was taken. And these are the fears, is it cancel and
exactly.
I'll come to that.
Yeah, you will come to this, Prof.
I think the point we are making is that, well, we must always remember that we are living in a very specific age, the truth age, where the lie and the truth are vying for attention, and the lie seems to be doing better than the truth.
Exactly.
So that's one thing we need to look at. Two, I think the whole question of intent and why we woke up this early morning to come here is not to literally analyze this bill, because we can do that in our private places. It is to say what impact it will have in our democracy, because that's really what concerns. And to caution, if nothing else, against the misuse of our law to the detriment of our human rights and democracy. I think this is the essence of it. The details, I am told the devil and the angels are all in the details. And I think that's why this panel is so heated, because we went too much into the angels and the devils, the details. So the overarching thing, which concerns former Chief Justice Maraga, which concerns Hashi, which concerns Sheira and myself, is that, yes, we have to register it, the space of technology, cybercrime and all, that we have to do.
You have no problem.
But do in the context of the politics that we are having. And the experience we have in the immediate past. Can you trust? And that's why Sheila is talking about the trust deficit.
Correct.
I guess this is not really an attack on a system. It's a protection of our space.
Correct.
And the protection of our space is we would not want this new law to be misused to manipulate our elections in 2027.
Correct.
Or to criminalize opposition. Because let me say this, Hashi, and it may not make you like quoting texts and books and there's like...
It makes the conversation more interesting.
Not only interesting, but more grounded on the knowledge we have.
Yes.
I am sure you have watched this movie called The Godfather.
Yes, my favorite movie, actually.
Yes, and you know the transitions between the two Godfathers, the older
and the new one,
who has passed on, and the new one.
I'm sure he's watched that too.
Yes. Now, I would want us to invite, I would like to invite ourselves to rewatch that scene of the transition when the barrier is there and now somebody says, Shashi is dead. Shashi is dead.
Yes.
And so you are only left with me. Look at our situation here. Raila is dead. Uhuru is down. The other is down. So who are you left? So this is the place where we have now to move very, very cautiously to protect our democracy. And I think this is the spirit.
Yeah.
It's not really a dissent or a disagreement, the need to be regulated.
Yeah.
The need to regulate our space.
Of course, yeah.
It's about how do we protect our future moving forward.
Because that is wrapping up in immunity. You have to explain something, Dr. before I go to her.
Yes. I think she alluded to the question of a lady who was charged in Njeri, right? Now, this has happened in other jurisdictions as well. And for example, in England, we have many cases where, the prosecution tried to come up with different legislations to justify charging certain people on cybercrime-related issues. But they also failed in England. But because of the evolving nature of cybercrime and security, there was a need to update legislations across jurisdictions. So one of the reasons, I think, for this update in the Kenyan legislation, which has also happened in many other jurisdictions, is to ensure that you can cover specific crimes which you could not cover under the old legislations. So I think that is what they are trying to achieve here, because it has happened in so many jurisdictions. You charge somebody and the court says no, and I don't think that there's no offense there. There's no provision in the law that allows you to charge this person. So in terms of the global context in fighting cybercrime, then jurisdictions have been advised to update their legislations, and they constantly do it. But the fear they're alluding to even exists in jurisdictions like the United States. There is fear of overreach even in America. Okay?
It's already been in the case of Mahmoud Khalil.
Yes.
The Palestinian student.
There is always that fear of overreach globally. And I think that is the point he's alluding to. There is that fear of overreach.
And also she pointed out Albert Ojwang.
Albert Ojwang.
Yeah, a specific case. And the tax lady who was charged with terrorism.
Yes. So, but ultimately, I think we can't run away from, regulating or legislating on these issues because, as he mentioned, there are criminals using these particular systems, to criminal activities. And I think the overall intention probably is to nail them, but there's that fear of overreach, which we need to balance.
Yeah, especially the context we live in.
Especially the context.
Even what happened last year.
Yes, I think that, the whole world is turning right. Every country, even in the West, where we get all these canon of the law from the Wazungus there in Europe, is turning to the right. You can see the demonstrations in Europe against on the issue of Gaza, where people are being taken to being arrested on the streets for exercising simple things, like the right of assembly, things like from the Magna Carta, things that were established from the Magna Carta. And I think that we always have to be very vigilant about the law. And one of the things that we have to be very vigilant about is something called aesthetics. For an example, if I come and take a cockroach and I stomp on it down on the floor here, nobody will make any problems with me. They will say, you kill the cockroach, it's good for society. But if a beautiful butterfly comes here and I kill it, the panelists are going to jump up and say, why did you kill this beautiful butterfly? So there is aesthetics and morality and a view to the issues. And I think that we should not be cheated by the Lucani of the law, nor should we be told that the substance of the law is the university of our feelings. It's wrong and I think immoral to posit in a place where we have seen our country nearly go down the drain because of how the government is ruling. We have every right, every moral right. suspicious about a legislation that has been couched on children pornography, that has been couched on terrorism, that has been couched on other issues. But inside, in the, as my fellow was saying, the angels and the devils of the law, there is the possibility that the government can use these laws for certain ends. And there have been examples, and the next woman representative for Migori has told me, has shown us that. And I think that we have been debating and made this broadcast journalist a political party because we want to stop a conservative right-wing government from taking away from the constitution of Kenya, in which people like I struggled and paid for. Some people who didn't pay any price for this constitution, I did. So I think I have a moral responsibility to speak about it.
Council, coming to you then, you have explained the portion of the bill, the law that you have talked about, ideally. And of course, no one has, including Prof and all of us here, no one has the untrammeled right to say what we like, when we like. Of course, there's decency, there's morality, and of course, there's the legal limit that we can't bypass. If we breach, of course, we'll be subject to punishment. But given what young people have faced in this country in 2024, and how the political class has been angst and the deep apprehension amongst them of how young people have been using the social media platforms to advance a cause like the Finance Bill of 2024, where they translated that into all the mother languages of this country, how they managed to explain complex things, break it down. Isn't this an attempt, in your view, in hindsight, if you study between the lines, to keep a lead on what young people are voicing on social media?
Thank you, Ayub. Perhaps the context with which I would, and I thank you for the straight and direct questions. I operate from the basis of, I am never so sure of what I want, I wouldn't take anything better. And that is precisely the context with which I would suggest to my fellow panelists, I would want to learn from you as much as you learn from me.
Correct.
My assessment, even in the political space, because I run a company called Camp Crack Africa, I conduct voter pattern analysis. So I'm deeply intimate with the suggestions that are being discussed beyond the law. And perhaps one point that I'm seeing emerging consistently is that we have there is a general presumption that the opposition is always right.
No.
No.
There is a general presumption that the opposition is always right. I don't think I said. Just let me finish.
He has the freedom to say what.
Yes.
Yeah.
Protect, which way?
You are protected by the speaker. Yes, Council, proceed.
I think we are going to be good friends after this.
Very good friends.
And possibly a client.
Hashi is anti-democracy.
Yeah. I think you have a new target now.
Yes, Council.
I was suggesting something else. We have a presumption, whether we can agree or not, but there's a general presumption oscillating in the air that if you oppose anything that comes from the government, you are ideally right. Because anything that operates from the state perspective has things called checks and balances. Whether it has worked well or not is a separate discussion. Because like I alluded to, any excesses by state officials, the only recourse we have is the rule of law. And the rule of law must be applied in a certain modicum. For instance, if someone is charging you beyond their powers, and it is not just the case of the DPP or police officers, we had a certain case of one of the wealthiest men in this country who was being charged with a tax claim of 140 billion, and the charge sheet was being drawn by a police officer. The only recourse we had in the rule of law to amend that legal injury was by the courts reversing that position that the certain state actors are taken. So the rule of law is not necessarily a big terminology in the air. It is what we have all agreed. What happens when this social contract that we have is broken? How do we remedy that situation on behalf of the general public? So whether it has worked well or not is something that we can discuss and see how to improve. And we have seen measures to improve that. Yes. Lastly, as I tie that bow, for me, the context in which we are talking about is, I find that if I can influence you, then I can control your emotion. And which is why I started primarily by saying, if we don't understand the context, we are going to misinform and disinform. Because we all know here that you can actually stoke anger. You can stoke resentment.
I think that's an appalling thing. That's appalling thing.
You can create...
In what aspect?
That is not even in the journalist law. Okay. This is nonsense what he's speaking about.
Can I wrap it down?
It's Protestant. Let him finish.
Yeah,
I mean, no.
Yes.
He's finished. It's
no, he hasn't. Let him finish. Yeah.
He's the speaker.
Yes. Proceed, Muge.
So you can actually stoke resentment, and it has been seen before that and taking the American case.
For example,
it goes,
what constitutes resentment?
Oh my God.
Okay, what constitutes resentment is strong feelings of anger or emotions towards something. And what I'm suggesting to this panel is we can stoke it. For instance, if I repeatedly, and this is the object of the act, if I repeatedly go to Kagwanja's page and bombard him with things that are meant to demean him, to harass him, to do something to him, it is going to affect his psyche in one way or another.
So this is
and Facebook
mainly this is meant to then in the
and we have seen that mainstream giants, for instance, Facebook, we have seen them being charged in courts of law with algorithms that are targeted towards forming people in a particular direction.
So what is the intention? Who are the people who are driving that resentment in your view?
You see, you don't necessarily have to have a particular person who is easily recognizable. For instance, when an algorithm is attuned towards what you prefer, or towards what someone has paid for, including, say, adverts or will constantly appear on your screen, then I can influence you to act in a particular direction. And that's what I'm saying, that you can actually stoke anger, you can stoke happiness, you can influence an individual to act in a way that is even contrary it's even contrary to a person's interest. And the ability to prevent such actions is extremely difficult. And it is important that we sit here and see what is the best way to combat something. Because people who do that kind of work are bigger than governments. They don't exist in particular jurisdictions that we can control.
I understand where you come.
My senior lawyer friend and I were debating a case we were taking to court. And I'll never forget that morning when he told me, you know, Prof, law is 25%, strategy 75%. The 75% is what is society, is what is us. And law is just 25% maximum. And therefore, when a law is presented to you, 25% is already there. That's okay.
The strategy.
The essence of the law, what we call the devils and the angels in the detail. The reality is how the law impact on the 75%, what is about us. And I think debated here, and what is this of concern, because I'm sure members of the government are watching and listening to us, is the following. That the first experience, even before this law came into effect, was that there's a misuse of existing law to encroach on the human rights of Kenyans.
Correct.
Including doing the utmost, taking people's lives on that. And we have had demonstrations in this country over the 2 years on that account. So that is one. And when you look at the written reason by Justice Maraga as to why this is of concern, it is all about opening a window where you have a blank check and you can sign in anything. And that will get us to where Nepal is. Because in Nepal, Nepal banned, not because the law was bad in the eyes there, but because it undermined the very essence of the freedom of the Nepalian population. And therefore, the debate we are having here is very legitimate. It's not a debate about our law. It's a debate about our democracy.
Exactly.
And whether the new law is a tool that's going to be instrumentalized and weaponized against us.
Okay.
And I think that's where the debate is. It's not about the veracity of the law. It's not about whether, because why we have parliament? We have it to pass laws. Why do we have parliament? Because we trust it.
Yeah.
We trust our institution. But what we don't trust now is the political manipulations that we are going through, to the point that we cannot even bury one of our best heroes. And we're in a hurry that morning, you're announcing the death and you are, you're signing the bill. Even that in itself, the timing is everything. Yeah. So, in a sense, I see the debate, the impatience of my brother. I've been with Hashi for many years.
Yes,
in
a lot of
forums. Yeah, the coffee is good today. Coffee is good today. So, but I guess what Hashi is impatient with is that he wants you to extrapolate, just get the kernel of what is our concern.
Yes.
It's not the bill.
Yeah.
It's not that. It is the intention of the system.
Yes, Sheila, Dr. Hashi, the final word, and then we sample the people.
Final word.
You are not alone.
Good.
Yeah. And you'll have 30 seconds for that. Yes, Sheila, please.
No, I think, Prof, you've captured it very well. My learned friend here, it is about the intentionality of the law. The law is something that we live through. And I think if you allow me, there's a great quote that I got here. On October 13th, 2024, the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga tweeted this: "The most sacred of our freedoms is that of speech. We must jealously guard our hard-earned freedom of speech." And for me, this is the guiding light when I come into this conversation. I come into this conversation because, as we were taught, and I thought it was so ironic that it was signed the same morning that we lost Baba, and I could not even think about it, about signing of a bill. But my point is that so many things have happened in history that have been legal. So for me to tell me that something is legal is not enough. We look at the case today in Palestine, Israel, a lot of things going on are legal. You might not like it, but they are legal. You look at Hitler in Germany.
Yes.
Hitler, he burnt down parliament.
Hitler acted legally. You might disagree with what he did, but Hitler did everything legally. It was not unlawful. And
his propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, said you should not be worried if you are clean.
You should not be worried if you're clean.
Come about,
So let us not sit here and just assume because it is legal, then it is right. It is a God-given right that this country belongs to us. We will fight back. We will look into the details, and we will find balance. We do need a robust cyber law bill that is very clear. There's very good aspects of that bill, anywhere from child pornography to fraud and the rest of it. That is great. Please do not misquote us critics by saying that we disagree with the entire bill and that we are against fighting child pornography or all these other things. That is not the case. That's why they did it. That is not the case. The devil is in the details. It is the details that affect the Kenyan Constitution that we do not agree with.
Dr. Yes.
Yes, one of the aspects that I tried to look at is the proportionality of the offenses. And I looked at different jurisdictions. I mentioned South Africa, Tanzania, Ghana. And they appear to be almost like what we have in this particular law. And sometimes proportionality depends on your particular circumstances. To what extent should the penalties be to deter certain kind of behavior? So in terms of proportionality, you need to understand whether the penalty that you're applying from a behavioral law perspective is sufficient to the particular problem you're trying to handle. And there's a lot of debate on that particular subject. On the question of speech, I think that there's a general assumption that you need more and more speech. But if empirical evidence shows that sometimes the people that are bombarded with all this information and content sometimes don't have the ability to rationally assess. So that is why you find there are some cases where hate speech, for example, leads to civil strife and other related issues. So we need to strike a balance to ensure that we still maintain our country. We don't slide. As indicated, Facebook, in the case of Facebook in Myanmar and Ethiopia, Facebook was accused of, leading to the strife that we saw in these jurisdictions.
Which was a lie.
So we have to be careful. We don't allow our country to slip into this time.
Very well said.
But we balance all the interests. Okay. Thank you.
30 seconds, Hamid.
Sad to say, I'm on the way. We'll be back on many a day. I lost a friend. Oh, my heart is broken.
Sorry.
May you rest in peace.
Okay, let me now sample the feedback. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Here's what you're saying. Gabi Wakasiaka says the political elites and top government officials are misusing the Cybercrimes and Manipulation Act to silence Kenya. The act is largely infringing on the superior provision of the law on the freedom of speech and right to life. Kenya isn't a banana republic. Kevin says, you all saw how the government misused the Terrorism Act to frustrate its own youths. Now imagine with this law at their disposal, it will be hell. It should be rejected in totality. Babu Michael says the cybercrime law just signed may be good in some aspects, but I'm very suspicious about it. This regime has shown us how to abuse our current laws since Gen Z's protests. The Gen Zs are currently being charged for terrorism. I'm worried, Kenyan. Sam Masika says, was the cyber law inspired by the Budapest Convention or the desire to protect the regime from critics who have thrived online? KK is known for its excesses and they cannot be trusted to act in good faith. Njeru says, by the look of things, Kenyans need to rethink and stay observant of every action, especially from the government. The motive is ill. The core purpose is to intimidate citizens from questioning government corruption and oppression. Oh, poors. And the final one from Zayed says the Cybercrime Act is a plot by the president to take control of social media, where he knows Gen Zs thrive best, though saying it's for fighting terrorism, etc. It's just yesterday that protesters were charged as terrorists. The government will misuse that law. It's a minute past 8. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your time. Sheila, appreciated. Daktari, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Council, thank you. Much appreciated. Prof, thank you. I'm just have a seat. Thank you so much for your input. It's a conversation that, of course, will keep on coming up and to enrich, of course, because this is the platform. Karibuni. The differences are also in appreciation of our democracy.
Yes. No, it's fine. I'm a big Democrat, and I just, I thought we would spend the last part talking about the leader of this country.
We will. Raila Odinga is omnipresent in death.
He's omnipresent here.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Your time is appreciated. Next up is Health and Lifestyle with Safina Chieng Oma. And many thanks for your time.
By the way,